Event Horizon. The first crew prologue, Eyes into the Void. There are places in the universe we were never meant to go, but we went anyway. In the cold silence beyond Neptune, where the last flickers of solar warmth die into the black, something wakened. The year was 2040. The Event Horizon, Earth's most ambitious deep space vessel, disappeared without a trace on its maiden voyage, a test of a radical propulsion system known only as the gravity drive. Its purpose, to bend space, to open a gateway between 2 points in the universe by folding reality in on itself. But the science was flawed, or worse, it was never meant for us. 7 men and women, astronauts, scientists, engineers, chosen not only for their brilliance but for their obedience. The crew of the Event Horizon were pioneers standing at the threshold of the unknown, daring to trespass where no human soul had ever walked, and they opened the door, not into space, but into something else. The data from the ship's last transmission was corrupted. A cascade of images burned into static and screams. Frame by frame, what could be salvaged revealed moments that defied sanity. Bodies twisted into inhuman shapes. A wall pulsing with wet, organic movement. A man laughing while his eyes melted from their sockets. Then silence. A perfect hollow. Silence that stretched across the void for 7 long years, until she returned, drifting, cold, empty, or so we believed. The Event Horizon came back, but her crew did not. Not intact, not human. The rescue logs were sealed, the survivors' testimony censored or silenced, and so the truth was buried, burned, denied. But this story is not about the rescue. This story is about the first crew, what they saw, what they became, what waited for them on the other side of that impossible jump. Understand this. Hell is not a place of fire. It is a design, a logic, a cold architecture of pain so perfect it transcends comprehension. And once you pass through its gate, it knows you. It knows your secrets, your desires, your guilt, and it will use them all to make you scream. There is no salvation here, no escape, no light, only the infinite echo of your own agony. They were the first to go. They were the first to be taken, and this is their story. Welcome aboard the Event Horizon. Liberate Tutemet ex inferis. Save yourself from hell. Chapter 1. The silence between stars space is silent, but silence is not the same as peace. The Event Horizon slid through the black like a ghost, a spear of iron and composite glass, its jagged silhouette crawling across the orbit of Neptune. No engine trails, no comms chatter, just the hush of existence where light went to die. Inside, the crew of 7 lived in artificial gravity, held together by the hum of recycled air and routine. But even routine can feel wrong when you're standing at the edge of the unknown. The crew captain, Elias Braddock, was the mission commander, a war-scarred veteran of Europa's resource conflicts, known for his cold, decisive calm. People said he never blinked, that his blood ran quiet even when everyone else was screaming. He was a man who believed in control. He would learn that control is an illusion. Dr. Juliette Kren, the ship's lead physicist and designer of the gravity drive, was a genius by every metric that mattered. And a woman haunted by dreams she wouldn't speak of. She often stood by the core chamber for hours just staring at the machine she had built, like it was speaking to her, like it was listening. Chief Engineer Malcolm Voss kept the ship alive, stoic, obsessed with numbers. He claimed to hear the Event Horizon's heartbeat through the bulkheads. "We're not flying her," he said once in the mess. "She's carrying us." Lieutenant Aidan Smoke Reeves, navigation and comms, a joker with a buzz cut and nicotine. Gum tucked in his cheek, always talking, always moving, always hiding the tremor in his left hand he thought no one noticed. Dr. Aria Sang, medical officer, quiet, kind, but beneath the kindness, a guilt she carried like a second skin. She'd lost someone on the operating table 2 years ago, a child. Since then, her dreams were filled with teeth. Crewman Yuri Petrov, systems technician, young, eager, Russian-born, Raised in a colony that no longer existed, he believed in fate, in the machine, in Kren's vision. He was the first to volunteer for the gravity drive test. He would not be the first to die, but he would die screaming. And then there was Father Darius Holt, UN observer. Not a priest in the traditional sense, more a spiritual liaison, a relic. The brass thought his presence might soothe the psychological strain of deep space travel. He had eyes like hollow glass and a cross tattooed behind one ear. He knew something, and he never slept. Day 14. They had been in orbit around Neptune for 2 weeks. The planet loomed massive and deathly blue beneath them, the gravity drive. Housed in a chamber deep within the midsection of the ship, a mechanical altar of spinning rings and humming cores. It pulsed at night, not with electricity, with presence. The crew didn't talk about it openly, but each of them felt it, in their bones, in the dreams that twisted when they slept. The ship was quiet, yes, but not empty. The kind of quiet that listens back. Kren ran final diagnostics. From the lab, her hands shaking ever so slightly as she typed. She hadn't eaten in 24 hours. She hadn't blinked in 5 minutes. The gravity drive's quantum matrix was stable, but stability was no longer reassuring. It felt more like a trap, like something was waiting for them to say yes. In the mess hall, Captain Braddock reviewed the pre-jump procedures, his voice cold and precise over the internal comms. Jump test is scheduled for 0700. All departments finalize checks. Once we commit to activation, there is no abort protocol. No one responded, because they all knew. They had reached the point of no return. That night Reeves awoke gasping, cold sweat dripping into his eyes. He had been dreaming of an endless corridor, metallic, rusted, screaming. At the far end was a door made of flesh, sewn together with barbed wire and wet breath. He couldn't move in the dream. He could only watch as the door slowly opened. Beside him, in the corridor, the lights flickered, just once, long enough to make him turn and look down the hallway outside his cabin. And for a split second he swore he saw someone standing there. Or something. It had no face, but it was smiling. The drive awakens in the heart of the event horizon. The gravity drive sat dormant, for now. A great metallic sphere ringed with gyroscopic arms, carved with symbols that no one remembered carving. Languages that no database recognized. When asked, Kren simply said, "They came from the simulations." What simulations? The ones I don't remember running. And now it was time. Final checks. Green system integrity. Nominal quantum spike. Stable. The crew assembled in the control gallery. No one spoke. Captain Braddock's finger hovered over the activation pad. Kren looked at the machine. Her lips moved, soundless, mouthing words that did not belong to any human language. Father Holt closed his eyes. He whispered one word. Amen. Then Braddock pressed the button. The rings of the gravity drive began to spin. The lights dimmed. The ship screamed, and the event horizon tore a hole into a place it was never meant to go. Chapter 2. The door opens. Hell is not fire, it is clarity. A place where you are made to understand everything. 7:01. Hours. Gravity drive engaged. The room shook as the gravity drive spun to full rotation. The rings blurred into halos of metal and light, and then the center opened. Not like a machine, like an eye. A black sphere expanded in the heart of the drive chamber, folding inward on itself, rippling like water suspended in a vacuum. Space, itself bent, distorted. A low-frequency hum pressed against the crew's skulls, rising like tinnitus wrapped in whispers. Then came the voice, not over comms, not through speakers, inside their minds. I see you. Kren collapsed to her knees, vomiting blood. Holt's mouth moved, whispering ancient syllables. Braddock stood frozen, eyes wide, pupils gone, consumed by black. The event horizon buckled. Its light strobed into chaos. The ship was no longer orbiting Neptune. There was no more Neptune. There was only the place they had gone. The other side, it was not space. There were no stars. No void. Just a sky of skin stretched endlessly, twitching with veins and moving bumps like things crawling beneath the surface. The laws of physics shuddered, bent, wept. Through the viewports, the crew saw structures, towering spires made of bone, pulsating towers wrapped in chains and flayed sinew, floating cathedrals of rot and ritual. Reeves whispered, "Where the fuck are we?" Voss was shaking uncontrollably, eyes locked on his engineering console. None of this is real. None of this is... We're in a hallucination, a shared delusion, quantum resonance. Pop, he screamed. His left ear exploded, blood jetting down his neck. The temperature dropped instantly. Frost bloomed across the windows. Breath misted in the air. And all across the ship, from deck to deck, the walls began to bleed. Not figuratively, literally. A crimson ooze trickled from junctions and bulkheads. The lights dimmed to a dull, flesh-like red. And the ship began to change. Metal bent inward, reshaping, growing. Doors twisted, corridors warped, sharp edges where none had been before. Kren, still kneeling, raised her head and smiled. It's alive. 7:07. Hours. First Death crewman Yuri Petrov was the first to die. He had gone to the lower maintenance bay to isolate the coolant breach, but the coolant lines were no longer there. Instead, he found a corridor that had never existed before. It was carved from stone, lined with writhing cables that looked like veins, and flickering torches that burned with black fire. At the far end, a door stood open, breathing, in and out, like a lung. He felt drawn. He didn't question it. Inside, the room was round. Circular symbols spiraled outward across the floor, etched in flesh and metal, soaked in warm blood. Chains hung from the ceiling. Not industrial chains, but decorated, ornate, cruel. In the center stood a shape, tall, human-like, but skinned, no eyes, hooks in its face. Its chest slowly opened, revealing a pulsing red heart wrapped in wire. It raised its hand. A single gesture, and Yuri screamed. The others heard it, through walls, across decks, a sound that was no longer human, a scream that peeled back sanity. Then silence. Braddock sent Reeves and Voss to find him. What they found instead was a trail of teeth, all of Yuri's teeth arranged in a perfect spiral along the floor. On the wall above them, smeared in blood, were the words, "I showed him what he asked to see." Holt's prophecy in the medbay. Father Holt sat cross-legged on the floor, rocking, murmuring. A bloody cross etched into his forehead with a scalpel. Arya Sang tried to speak to him, but he didn't seem to hear her. "This is the place beneath," he said. "The architecture of agony. We opened the door and it welcomed us. There is no God here, only design." Dr. Kren entered, her lab coat soaked, her face serene. "Father Holt," she said, "the drive is not malfunctioning, it's operating perfectly." He looked up at her, hollow-eyed. "That's what I'm afraid of." The ship turns, every hour. Another corridor changes. Rooms move. The mess hall now leads to the cryo chamber. The cryo chamber now leads to a room made of bone. Voss begins to pull out his hair. The architecture. It's non-Euclidean. It's alive. It's watching. It wants us to get lost. They've tried to shut down the drive. It won't shut down. They've tried to turn the ship around. The nav system loops endlessly. Every path forward leads deeper. Kren has stopped sleeping. She speaks to the ship now, sometimes in her own voice, sometimes in a voice that is not hers. The final log of Yuri Petrov recovered later from a cracked helmet cam. I saw the machine's heart. I felt it beat in my own chest. It showed me my mother. It showed me my death. It showed me myself. Turning inside out, laughing, begging to be heard again. And I did, God help me. I did. Chapter 3. Reflections in Blood. You don't go to hell, it comes to you. 7:35. Hours. Shipwide condition. Unstable, the event horizon no longer obeyed the laws of nature. The floor creaked beneath footsteps that didn't exist. Reflections appeared in windows where no one stood. Lights pulsed in rhythms that matched the human heart, but always just a half-beat off, like a dying echo. In the medical bay, Dr. Arya Sang tried to suture what remained of Petrov's helmet cam. Scorched metal twisted inward, as if something had chewed its way out. Her hands shook. Her skin was clammy. Every time she looked up at the glass of the medbay wall, she saw a reflection behind her. A child. A girl with half a face. A girl she once failed to save. The image never moved. But every time Arya blinked, the girl was closer. The vision begins. Kren didn't speak for nearly an hour. She stood in the gravity drive chamber with her back to the others, fingers outstretched, hovering just above the drive's black sphere. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her mouth was forming symbols, not words. Braddock approached her slowly. "Kren," he said. She turned. Her eyes were bleeding. "It's learning us," she whispered, like a child tasting language. "It's learning how we think, and soon, it'll start to answer." Braddock recoiled slightly. "Answer what?" She tilted her head. "What we never dared to ask." Reeves hadn't slept in 32 hours. His fingers trembled as he held his sidearm, his nicotine gum, replaced by a chewed fragment of his own tongue. He wandered the hallways now, alone, convinced that Yuri's screams were still echoing in the vents. He rounded a corner near the primary coolant junction and froze. His own voice was coming. From behind a bulkhead. "You left him, just like your brother." Reeves gasped. No. You ran when the fire started. You could have pulled him out, but you didn't. You watched the room burn and you did nothing. The walls around him melted, revealing the charred remnants of a childhood bedroom. Scorched toys, blackened wallpaper. A body burned into the floor. Reeves fell to his knees, sobbing. And from behind him, a door creaked open. He turned. His brother stood there, burned black, teeth gleaming. "Let me show you what it felt like, Aiden." The scream that followed didn't stop for 3 minutes. When Voss found him, Reeves's eyes were gone. The ship feeds. The ship began to mirror their thoughts, drawing rooms from memory, sounds from grief. The mess hall now appeared as the funeral chapel from Braddock's military past. The storage lockers bled wine. The oxygen garden displayed vines twisting into nooses, growing slowly around the window frames. They tried to lock the gravity drive down. Voss ripped out fuses. Kren smashed control circuits with a wrench. But the drive only pulsed, steady, patient, its sphere opening and closing like a breathing wound. It didn't need the crew anymore. Now it was awake. The man with no face, Father Holt, became catatonic shortly after Reeves's breakdown. He sat, beneath the central crucifix he'd welded to the mess wall on day 2, staring at it with eyes full of unshed tears. But then, without warning, he stood and walked to the chapel bay. Arya followed him, afraid. The door closed behind her. Inside the chapel, Holt had begun drawing, with blood, feces, oil, an elaborate circle of symbols, none of which matched. Anything from any Earth culture. They moved when you looked away. They hummed in frequencies too low to hear, but deep enough to feel in the spine. In the center of the circle stood a figure. Impossible, not a hallucination. It was tall, genderless. Its skin was white leather, stretched too tight, decorated with hundreds of tiny surgical lacerations that wept clear fluid. No mouth, no eyes. Its fingers ended in hooked needles. Its body was wrong, symmetrical but too perfect, like it had been designed by something that understood pain as art. Father Holt fell to his knees. The thing reached out, and he welcomed it. Kren's truth Dr. Juliet Kren sat alone in the lab, now dimly lit by flickering halogen lights that buzzed like flies. Her computer screen was displaying rows of code she had not written, symbols like veins, loops, a language that felt alive. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She smiled, because she remembered now. It didn't come from another galaxy, she whispered into the recorder. It came from outside the pattern, not another place, another state of being. We didn't invent the gravity. Drive, it showed it to us, piece by piece, in dreams, equations, whispers. I just listened. Her voice cracked. And now it's listening to us, what we regret, what we want, what we'll do anything to forget. That's what it feeds on. Then, faintly from the hallway outside, laughing, not human, not machine, something in between. Braddock. Brakes Captain Braddock found himself in his quarters, staring at a file that no longer existed. His old CO. His dead wife. His own voice, ordering an orbital strike that incinerated an entire civilian facility during the Europa uprising. He watched the feed again and again, until a hand, his wife's hand, touched his shoulder from behind. He turned and saw her. Perfect, untouched, smiling softly. You did what you had to, Elias. He shook his head. No, I knew. I knew there were people inside. She cupped his face warm and soft. You've punished yourself enough. Now let me punish you. She reached down his chest and began to dig. Chapter 4. The Ritual Engine. The ship was never a vessel, it was a summoning circle, waiting to be fed. 11 hours. The ship transforms. The event horizon was no longer a ship. Deck plating peeled back like flesh, exposing coils of sinew-stained cable that twitched and pulsed. Bulkheads reshaped into arches of bone and ivory fangs. The clean, sterile white corridors of a human vessel were replaced by catacombs, damp with living fluid, walls etched with ritual scars. The corridors changed behind them. What was once engineering became a cathedral of agony. What was once the med bay became a birthing chamber of broken metal and wet cries. There was no escape, no route back. The ship was leading them now, room by room, into its ritual heart. At the center, the gravity drive throbbed louder than ever, its hum becoming a chorus of damned voices. It was no longer a machine. It was a throne. Voss and the Mechanist Chief Engineer Voss had barricaded himself in Subdeck 4, using scrap metal, wiring, and pieces of Yuri's scorched pressure suit. He'd lost his voice screaming. His eyes darted. He hadn't eaten in 18 hours, but he didn't notice. He was talking to the engines now, to something inside them. If I realign the circuits, if I redirect the field, I can trap it. I can trap IT. I built this ship. I made it work. I can make it stop. The lights above him went cold. He turned slowly. There stood a figure of metal, a thing shaped like a man, but with joints of gears and tubing of wet black nerve. Its head was a gearbox, spinning slowly. Inside its hollow chest was a furnace. Inside that, screaming, it reached out. Not to harm, to offer. A cable emerged from its palm. A plug. Voss stared at it, breathing heavily. And then, he smiled. I see. I see it now. You want me to finish the work? He took the plug and shoved it into his own neck. Sang's Fall Doctor. Arya Sang had tried to stay rational. Notes, logs, observations. She'd filmed everything, Reeves's breakdown, Holt's corruption, Kren's descent into serenity. But in her mind, a door had begun to open, and it never closed again. Found herself in the surgical bay and in the chair. Not a reflection, another version of her. Eyes gouged out, stomach split open. Her own voice whispered from the corpse's mouth. You save them all, or you save none. The lights buzzed. She stepped forward, trembling. On the floor, surgical, tools, bone saw, scalpel, rib spreader. The corpse of herself whispered again, choose. Either you go back out there and die with them, or you stay in here and make something useful of yourself. She didn't scream. She closed the door and began cutting. The chapel Captain Braddock emerged from his quarters, limping. His uniform was torn. Blood poured from a gash across his ribs. He no longer spoke in full sentences. His eyes were empty. He followed the path, the one the ship wanted him to follow. Down 7 decks, past the venting shaft, through the blast-sealed door that should not have existed, into the chapel. Only it was no longer a chapel, it was a ritual chamber. Walls of skin, pillars of bone, hooks dangling from sinew cords, an altar in the center etched in ancient glyphs that bled when looked at directly, and upon the altar, Holt, or what remained of him. His face was a mask of flayed symbols. His body had become rooted into the ship. His spine fused to the floor, veins pulsing into the wiring. "You are the sacrifice, Elias," Holt rasped, voice like rust scraping metal. "The shepherd must suffer first. The gate must be painted. In guilt." From behind Braddock, chains slithered out. He didn't run. He offered his arms, and they were taken. Kren's revelation, Gokter. Kren now spoke fluently in the ship's language, symbols no human could write. She etched them with her fingers, her nails, even her teeth. In the gravity drive chamber, she sat before the sphere, eyes closed, hands open. "It's almost done," she whispered. "The engine is the altar. The crew is the blood. The pain is the key. This was never about FTL travel. It was never about exploration. It's about conversion." She looked up and saw herself in the reflection of the black sphere. Not now, not human, but reborn. Her face was covered in golden lattice. Hooks pierced her lips, keeping them in a soft smile. Her eyes glowed red from within. She wore a robe made of the Event Horizon's own hull plating, sewn with human sinew. She was not horrified. She bowed. Ship-wide broadcast. Final Loga voice echoed through the ship's internal comms. It was Braddock's voice, or something using it. "We made a door. We asked to see what was on the other side, and it came. It showed us who we really are. It offered eternity, and we said yes. You will not recover this ship. You will not find our bodies. We are part of it now. The Event Horizon is no longer yours. It belongs to the other place. And it's still hungry." Chapter 5, Beyond the Flesh. You don't just cross a threshold, you are changed by it. And once your skin remembers pain, it never forgets how to bleed. 46. Hours. Gravity drive status. Awakened, the Event Horizon was singing, not with instruments or alerts, but with a low, constant hum, a vibration deep in the bones. It bled through the walls, seeped into muscle, rewrote nervous systems. Those who still breathed began to twitch in rhythm with it. The ship had become a womb, and the crew were its afterbirth. The birth of Voss deep in Subdeck 4. Voss's body was no longer human. Tubes ran from his spine into the power conduits. His flesh had split to accommodate circuitry, grown like parasites through his arms and chest. His left eye was now a lens that turned with a mechanical whir, constantly scanning for movement. That wasn't there. He spoke to the ship, but not with words, with code written in pain. Field integrity restructured, neural mesh complete, chamber warm, open the veil. In his vision, he saw diagrams written in bone, schematics of suffering. The Event Horizon had shown him its final form. A ship is a shell. A ritual is a seed. Pain is the sun that makes it bloom. He smiled with teeth that were no longer his. Dr. Kren ascends. Kren no longer walked. She glided barefoot through the hallways, untouched by the filth and blood soaking the deck plates. Her skin had turned porcelain pale, her veins visible and glowing violet beneath the surface. Symbols burned down her arms, living runes that shimmered when she whispered the ship's name. No one else knew the name. Only she. Only the chosen. She entered the auxiliary core and traced a circle in the air. Reality bent. From the corridor behind her came screaming. Arya's voice, or what was left of it, sobbing and repeating the same words. "This isn't me. This isn't me. This isn't me." But Kren did not turn. "It's always been you," she said. Then she stepped through the wall and was gone. The Hanging Gardens. The oxygen garden had changed. No longer a sanctuary of green, it had become a vertical cathedral of flesh. Vines were replaced with veins, coiling up toward broken light fixtures. Where flowers had once bloomed, now opened eyeless sockets, watching silently. Hooks swayed from the ceiling, each one holding a part of Reeves. A finger, an eye, a piece of lung. At the center of the garden, Captain Braddock hung crucified in air, suspended by invisible force. His mouth moved. This is mercy. This is clarity. We are no longer chained to form. His voice echoed, but the words were not his. They were the ship's, using his lungs, Arya's last choice daughter. Sang wandered the halls with a surgical saw in one hand, a lantern in the other. Her white coat had become a shroud of blood and bandages. She was talking to someone, no one knew who. If I can excise the memory from the tissue, if I can cut out the guilt, maybe I can be clean again. Maybe I can be alone. She entered the morgue, not because she had to, because the ship wanted her there. The slabs were full. She recognized every body. Yuri, Holt, Reeves, her sister, her child, herself. Again. They all opened their eyes. "Let us out," they whispered. "It's your turn now." Arya did not scream. She laid down on the final slab and began cutting herself open. The ship becomes truth. The Event Horizon's hull twisted. External sensors captured. Footage of the ship bending inward, the structure folding into impossible angles. Metal groaned like old bone and new limbs began to emerge. Tendrils, lattices, architectural appendages not built but born. The gravity drive surged. The black sphere opened, no longer spinning, breathing. From its core came a voice in every tungi impossible to interpret. But the message was clear. We are the hunger at the center of infinity. We are the teeth beneath creation. You open the door, and now you will watch what crawls through. Deck by deck, the ship imploded into light and reassembled, not as a ship but as a gate. Final moments, the last operational systems on the Event Horizon captured the following: bridge status, offline; life support, irrelevant; core temperature, absolute; human signatures, Voss absorbed; Kren ascended; Braddock merged; Sang dissolved; Holt enthroned. The ship sent one last broadcast, but it was not in words. It was a frequency, felt only by those who had ever stared at a void and wondered what stared back. That signal echoed and something answered. Chapter 6. The door stays open. You don't close a mouth once it's tasted blood. You don't lock a gate that wants to stay open. They thought it was gone, but the ship was only the beginning. 14 days later, Earth Orbital Station Leviathan. The transmission came in through static, a soft pulse, a recorded beacon, time-stamped, scrambled coordinates, faint audio beneath. A technician reviewed it without interest. Just another ghost. Ping in deep space. Then the whisper came through the headset. "Help us," that voice, human, familiar, Braddock's voice. "They're inside the walls. We're not alone anymore." The door stays open. Then silence. Then a burst of binary code. Over and over. Translated, it meant, "Come mission brief, UEE Nightfall." 14 years after the Event Horizon vanished near Neptune, a deep-range recon vessel, the UEE Nightfall, was dispatched following the mysterious ping. Mission Commander, Lieutenant Eleanor Vance Lead. Science Officer, Dr. Victor Harlan. Engineering, Lieutenant Jonah Carr. Medical, Dr. Mavie Nolan. Security Chief, Samuel Thrace. Mission Objective, investigate deep space distress beacon. Status, green-lighted for breach orbit. No crew member had access to the classified files on the Event Horizon. All they had was a set of coordinates and a single word entry in the mission archive. Unrecovered deep orbit. Contact. The Nightfall dropped from FTL at the edge of the Neptune expanse. There, cloaked in uncharted dust and ice, hovered a monolith. Not the Event Horizon. Something else. The shape was familiar. The spine-like hull, the gravity ring twisted in a permanent loop, but it was larger now, grown, changed, alive. Commander Vance's eyes widened. Jesus, that thing's bigger than any ship we've ever built. Dr. Harlan ran scans. Hull temperature's impossible. It's below zero and burning at the same time. That's not physics, that's religion, Nolan whispered. Or something worse. Thrace armed the breach squad. You want me to go inside that thing? No, said Carr. We're already inside it. Because the airlock had already opened. Boarding, entry into the past, they stepped into the impossible. The walls were coated in charred bone dust, fused with circuitry. Organic wire hung like wet veins from the ceilings. Symbols pulsated on every surface, not painted, not carved, grown, like tumors, like language with its own will. Thrace motioned ahead. Carr brought up rear with the scanner. It read movement. Everywhere, yet nowhere at once. Dr. Nolan paused by a wall panel. It was slick with a membrane that shivered at her touch. This ship, it's remembering us. In the center corridor, the door opened to the gravity core, but it wasn't a sphere anymore. It was a throne of teeth and bone, spinning in silence, suspended in a cage of living light, and in the throne sat something that had once been a man. Braddock's return. The figure in the throne looked at them, or through them. It had no eyes, no tongue. Its jaw had been reshaped into a golden lock with no key. Its flesh was pale gray, engraved with black scripture in an alien dialect. The suit was shredded, decorated with the medals of Captain Elias Braddock, now fused to his rib cage. Vance gasped. He's alive. No, Dr. Harlan muttered. He's become the ship. Suddenly the lights shifted red. The hum returned, and Braddock opened his mouth. The lock cracked apart. You came. Now there is no more Earth. Every screen aboard the Nightfall lit up at once, playing the last logs of the original crew, spliced with footage of their deaths, resurrections, and transmutations. Vance tried to call for evac. There was no response, because the Nightfall had already begun to fuse, molecularly, with the event horizon. The steel of her hull turned to ash flesh. The engines wept black ichor. Screams came from inside the walls. Carr burned alive in seconds. Nolan begged to be put down before her hands could become scalpels. Thrace shot himself before his bones began to unwrap and crawl. Only Dr. Harlan was left, and he laughed. Because the moment he saw the true engine, he understood everything. One transmission before the ship vanished once more, into the fold, into the black realm that had first birthed it. A final broadcast reached Earth. A visual of Harlan, eyes gone, flesh engraved, speaking in perfect calm. The event horizon is no longer a vessel. It is a weapon of ideology, a virus of faith, a belief system made of pain and permanence. It doesn't want you to fly to the stars. It wants to bring what's beyond the stars. Home. You opened the door once. Now it will never close. Prepare the cradle. The next ship will carry more than a crew. It will carry the truth. Chapter 7. Communion. The first infection was not flesh. It was sight. Then understanding. Then worship. You cannot unsee the gate. You can only kneel before it. Hours after the broadcast. Earth Mission Control, NEPTEC. Central Mission Control had expected a disaster. They expected radiation, hull breach, crew death. They did not expect faith. The return broadcast from the UEE Nightfall was replayed 12 times. No one noticed the whispers layered beneath the audio. No one noticed that everyone watching the footage had stopped blinking and started smiling. Dr. Elena Mendez was the first to speak after the 13th viewing. It's beautiful, she said softly. Why didn't we see it before? The ship. It's not evil. It's honest. She walked into the observation window and jumped. She didn't scream. She laughed all the way down. Gang, the first dreamers. The dreams came to thousands that night. Engineers, soldiers, children. They dreamed of corridors without end, of hooks singing lullabies in a black void, of a great sphere of hunger spinning in silence. They dreamed of a voice whispering in their own tongue. The door is open. The flesh must follow. Across 6 continents, 37 people woke up with the same words carved into their skin, without tools, without witnesses. We see through your eyes. Those who had seen the transmission began to change, and those who listened to their stories changed faster. Urban Roten, a collapsed subway tunnel in Berlin. A commuter train vanished between stops. When emergency crews arrived, they found no people, only the walls covered in a fleshy growth, coiled around the track like veins around bone. The metal had become soft, the lights bled red, the speakers in the abandoned train cars still played. Audio. The gate must not be closed. The gate is you. Offer what is warm, offer what is guilty. In a small town in Nevada, a family of 5 vanished. The only clue, a video recording on the living room television. Footage from the event horizon. The same clip Harlan had sent. The tape could not be removed. It played on loop even after the power was cut. Neighbors began hearing voices in the walls. Infection protocols. The Earth Security Council initiated Code Mourner, a planet-wide alert for memetic contamination. Every analyst who had studied the Event Horizon file began reporting hallucinations. Symptoms: sudden loss of self-identity, recitation of non-human languages, spontaneous bleeding from symbol-shaped lesions, desire to be rewritten, violent peacefulness. Colonel Darius Wynn authorized the total burn of Data Tower Theta. Inside were 32 personnel and 2 children of staff. None resisted. Some cheered as the flames took them. Wynn gave his report with dead eyes. You're not saving them. You're only delaying its bloom. He shot himself before questions could be asked. The conversion points. The infection wasn't physical. It was ideological. Places that housed memory, reflection, and faith began to fracture. In Vatican Vault 9, priests witnessed a golden sphere in the crypt's darkness. It spoke in the voices of martyrs. At CERN, particle accelerators began moving without human input, forming the sigils seen aboard the Event Horizon. On an oil platform off the Indian coast, a crewman carved a perfect replica of the gravity drive into the steel deck. With his teeth, psychologists called it dimensional imprinting. Theologists called it revelation. The infected called it by a different name, communion. They met in underground chambers, in ruined churches, in abandoned facilities. They weren't praying, they were rebuilding. The new seed in a sealed facility beneath Iceland. An unauthorized experiment began. A black sphere, reverse-engineered from fragments of Event Horizon transmissions, was suspended in a zero-G chamber. They called it Project Gateway. It responded to no instruments. Until midnight, it spun once, only once. And suddenly, every screen in the building went black, then flashed a single image. A mouth, wide, infinite, full of screaming stars. Then one sentence carved into every wall by unseen force. It remembers you. All 62 staff vanished. Only the sphere remained, and it was spinning. Final message: a rogue signal appeared on every comm satellite on Earth. It played in every language, every dialect, every child's dream that night. A voice made of every voice. Your world is a womb. We planted the first seed, long ago. The ship was never the end, it was the messenger. Now the message is in you. The next gate will not be built. It will be born. Chapter 8. Cathedral in Orbit. They don't call them ships anymore. They're cathedrals, monuments to pain and belief, vessels to carry the new gospel into the void. The Event Horizon was only the first sermon. Orbit above Earth. The Forge Yard. The orbital dry dock glowed dimly beneath a blood-red Earth. Where proud vessels of exploration once stood, now floated the heretics' fleet. Black monoliths and twisted spires, impossible geometry encased in two. Sharp, organic plating that pulsed with a sickly crimson light. Each was named for a lost crew member of the Event Horizon. The flagship, the Braddock, held orbit closest to the planet. Its bridge was a hollow skull, grinning into the stars. The Pilgrim's commander, Eleanor Vance, had returned, or what remained of her. Her skin was translucent, veins glowing blue beneath a tapestry of sigils. Her eyes were black pools, reflecting the event horizon's dark heart. She was no longer human. She was a prophet. She addressed her crew through a whispering PA system that reverberated in the bones of every soul aboard. We were chosen to be the first to ascend. We are the carriers of the fire. The gate opened within us. Now we carry the flame to the stars. Her words were prayers, commands, incantations. The creation of the gates below. The Braddock's shattered bridge. Scientists turned priests labored feverishly. From fragments of the event horizon's gravity drive, they forged gate cores, miniature, black spheres spinning with silent hunger. Each core was embedded in the hull of the cathedral ships. They pulsed with power, bending time and space around the fleet. The gates would open, but not just to other dimensions. To hell itself, a nightmare unbounded. Jonah Carr, once an engineer, now the high priest of pain, stood over a living altar. Crew member was restrained, body fused with wires and bone, screaming in a language without vowels. Carr smiled. The sacrifice is the fuel. Pain is the key. Flesh is the door. With a ritual saw, he severed the man's hand. The wound did not bleed. Instead, black ichor poured out, feeding the gate core embedded in his chest. The ship trembled. The first. Jump the fleet formed a ring in geostationary orbit. Vance's voice echoed. Prepare for the crossing. The gate cores spun faster. A void tore open between them and the stars. From the darkness, shapes slithered, tentacles of light and shadow, echoes of nightmare made real. The cathedral ships did not flee. They did not fight. They welcomed the visitors. Earth below. A prayer of death below. Humanity's last hope was dimming. Cities went dark, one by one, as the event horizon's influence spread. Cults rose, preaching the coming of the new god, the black ship that devoured stars. The sky above Earth was no longer blue. It was crimson, and through the stars came the cathedral fleet, bearing the curse, the unspeakable truth in the final broadcast before. The jump, Vance's eyes shone with cold fire. This is not an invasion. It is an offering. We bring the gate. We bring the truth. And with it, the end of all things. The fleet vanished into the rip. The void swallowed them whole. And Earth waited. Chapter 9. The Descent. Beyond the gate lies a realm without mercy. Time is broken, space is torn, and souls are currency. The event horizon was just the front door. Now we have stepped inside the house of pain. The rift opens the cathedral. Fleet emerged from the jump into a realm where light itself screamed. Space folded like paper, stars bleeding into black pools that swallowed sound. The void was alive, and it hated them. Ships shuddered violently, alarms shrieking in unison. Carr whispered, teeth clenched. This is the place the ship came from, the origin of the engine, the realm of the pain gods. A landscape of torment outside the viewports, the stars were replaced by an endless horizon of twisted metal spikes and rivers of molten shadow. Mountains bled with lightless fire. The sky pulsed with rotting flesh. From the darkness emerged the first watchers, towering shapes of bone and wire, with eyes like black holes. They didn't move. They simply observed, and their gaze carried a weight. The crushing knowledge of eternal torment. The crew's fragments inside the cathedral ships. Madness bloomed. Corpses of former crew, those who had succumbed to the infection and began to stir. But these were not the living. They were fragments. Echoing memories twisted into new forms. Dr. Nolan appeared in one corridor, skin translucent, veins glowing, but she spoke only in riddles. Pain is the gate, pain is the way, but the pain is a lie. Vance found herself in a chamber where walls dripped black blood, the screams of the lost trapped beneath the surface. She fell to her knees. "What are we doomed to?" A voice answered from the darkness, cold and final. to become the fuel. Vinche first sacrificed. Carr led a ritual on the bridge of the Braddock. He bound a screaming crew member to the altar. With a ceremonial blade forged from the remains of the Event Horizon's core, he cut into flesh, the wound opening into a black. The prisoner's screams echoed into eternity, as tendrils of shadow ripped from the wound. Feeding the gate core. The ship roared. Time fractured. The eternal crucible. Reality warped. Some crew were lost in corridors that looped forever. Others were dragged into pits of screaming darkness, their forms shredded and reassembled as monsters, made of pain. Vance watched her reflection warp into a grinning skull. She realized then the cruel truth. The Event Horizon was never a ship. It was a prison. And now, they were the inmates. The unborn god deeper into the hellscape. The Cathedral fleet approached a monument unlike any other. A colossal gate, formed from the fused bodies of 1,000 souls, hung suspended between stars. It pulsed with dark light. Vance whispered, "This is the heart of the realm, the true engine, the unholy god of pain." The gate cores flared in response. A howl tore through the void, and the gates began to open wider. Chapter 10. The Heart of Darkness. There is no salvation here, only the slow burn of endless agony. The gate does not promise freedom. It demands surrender. The gate opens wide. The colossal gate throbbed and pulsed, its grotesque flesh walls undulating like a living wound freshly torn open. Light was swallowed. Sound was devoured. Around the gate's surface, writhing tendrils flickered in and out of existence, each one 1,000 screaming faces frozen in torment. The air itself was thick, viscous, suffocating, as if soaked in millennia of despair and blood. Vance stood at the threshold, her breath ragged, eyes wide as the ancient doorway slowly parted. From the abyss behind, a voice rose, echoing in 1,000 tongues, deep and terrifying. "Welcome home." It wasn't a greeting, it was a command, a sentence of judgment. The unholy engine revealed beyond the gate stretched a realm unlike any known to man. Impossible architecture sprawled across the horizon, twisted spires of bone and iron, stained, glass made of crystallized pain, and floors pulsating with a heartbeat not their own. In the center of this nightmare cathedral stood the engine itself, an immense pulsating mass of flesh and machinery fused in blasphemous union. Countless faces, frozen, in eternal scream, were embedded in the engine's living surface, mouths opening and closing, voicing cries that echoed through the void. The engine devoured light, hope, even time itself, an insatiable maw feeding on suffering. The last sacrifice. Jonah Carr, once a man but now a priest of pain, approached the engine altar. His eyes were black pits of madness, and his voice carried the weight of the damned as he spoke. The sacrifice feeds the flame. Pain births power. Flesh is the door. With a jagged blade forged from the remnants of the Event Horizon's shattered core, he raised his arm high, then drove the weapon deep into his own chest. A torrent of black ichor poured forth, thick, acrid, and alive, feeding the engine's insatiable hunger. His screams echoed, then warped into a hideous laugh as his body dissolved into the living machine. "I am the gate." Vance's terrifying realization, Commander Eleanor Vance stumbled closer to the engine's core, her hands trembling as she touched the writhing mass. Visions assaulted her mind, flashes of the Event Horizon's first jump, the hellish dimension it entered, and the terrible truth behind its disappearance. The ship had never been lost. It had been claimed. It was never meant to return to any reality but this one, a place of endless torment, a prison for souls condemned to fuel the engine's eternal hunger. The endless loop. Vance's body convulsed violently as the corruptive power surged through her veins. Her skin melted away like wax, revealing the hollowed bones beneath. Her eyes faded into empty voids, mirrors reflecting the abyss she now belonged to. Her voice barely a whisper, dripping with hopeless acceptance. "We are not crew anymore. We are the fuel, The gate will never close. It never was a ship. It was the promise of torment. The gate pulsed once more, swallowing her whole in a final shudder of darkness. The void consumes all. With a shudder that echoed across dimensions, the cathedral fleet dissolved into the hell dimension's maw. No transmissions escaped. No hope remained. Only silence. Only the endless, agonizing screams of those who crossed the threshold. Chapter 11. The Fracturing. The fabric of existence tears like fragile cloth. Time shatters into jagged fragments. Minds snap beneath the weight of endless agony. The nightmare consumes all. The shattered reality. The cathedral fleet drifted, aimlessly in a sky that was no longer a sky, but a living mosaic of fractured darkness and molten light. Stars cracked like glass shards, spilling raw void that roiled like blood. Space itself twisted and convulsed, a grotesque symphony of broken physics and nightmare geometry. Inside the ships, reality bent and fractured. Corridors twisted back on themselves in impossible loops. Rooms repeated infinitely, each iteration growing more corrupted, more twisted. Walls dripped with viscous black ichor. The very air seemed to pulse, heavy with the stench of burning flesh and despair. Time unravels. Time had fractured. Seconds stretched into unbearable eternities. Moments repeated endlessly, but never quite the same. Always with a new and unspeakable horror added. Vance could feel her consciousness being pulled apart in 1,000 directions. Her thoughts splintered like shattered glass. She whispered to herself, voice trembling, "What is real? What is memory? What is me?" She saw flashes of her own death, her body melting, becoming one with the hellscape. But the memory loop never ended. The last remnants, only fragments of the crew remained, shattered echoes of humanity. Their bodies were no longer human. Limbs, bent and twisted in impossible, grotesque angles. Faces split open like blooming flowers of raw flesh and bone, revealing rows of jagged teeth or hollow screaming voids. Eyes bled shadows. They whispered secrets in unholy tongues, words that seemed to carve themselves into the listener's soul. Some wandered, lost, mouths mouthing silent screams. Others convulsed on the floor, body parts fusing with machinery or the living hull of the ship itself. The whispering shadows from the ever-deepening darkness came shadows, slithering, twisting wraiths that moved without sound. These were the Gatekeepers, eternal sentinels born from the pain of 1,000 damned souls. Their forms flickered between solid and intangible, with eyes like voids that devoured light and hope. They whispered promises of release, but each word was a curse, a chain tightening around the soul. They hunted the broken crew, dragging the lost into pits of endless torment. The final break. Vance's mind shattered under the unbearable weight of it all. Fragments of memories tore through her consciousness. She relived every crew member's death, every moment of despair. Dr. Mendez's manic laughter as she fell into the pit of living flesh. The engineer's screams as his bones fused with metal, his body a grotesque hybrid of man and machine. Lytton Carr's final sacrificial scream, "I am the gate." Her own scream caught in her throat, silent in the broken corridors. Her mind unraveled, consciousness fracturing into infinite shards. She no longer knew if she was alive, dead, or something far worse. A world of screams. The hell dimension was no longer just a place. It had become a living nightmare, a malevolent, breathing entity that fed on pain and despair. Each scream from the crew echoed through the void, fueling the engine's endless hunger. Their bodies were no longer vessels. They had become prisons, eternal prisons of agony. Their souls were fuel. The unending darkness. As the final flickers of light faded from the cathedral fleet, the event horizon and all who followed her were swallowed entirely by the hell dimension's eternal maw. No messages escaped. No rescue came. Only the unending chorus of screams. Only the slow, crushing silence of despair. And far beyond the reach of time and space, the nightmare continued. Endless, merciless, and eternal. Chapter 12. The Eternal Silence. In the end, there is only silence, not peace, not rest, but the cold, unbroken void, where screams are swallowed whole and forgotten by the cosmos forever. The Catacombs of Madness, the Braddock, the flagship of the Cathedral fleet, was a hollow shell. Its corridors twisted endlessly, a labyrinth of dripping flesh and cold, unyielding steel. The air hung heavy with a sickly sweet scent of decay and burnt ozone. Vance moved through this living nightmare, her footsteps echoing in a void that swallowed all sound. Her body was fragile, cracked, skin hanging in pale strips, veins blackened as shadows danced beneath. Every breath she took was a struggle, every heartbeat a dull hammer of agony. The walls whispered secrets she could no longer understand, voices of the dead. Some pleading, some cursing, all damned. The last gathering in the cathedral's grand chamber, the surviving remnants of the crew gathered. They were ghosts, reflections of the people they once were. Bodies twisted into impossible shapes, faces melted, eyes hollow pools of black emptiness. Hands trembled, reaching out for salvation that would never come. Vance stood among them, the weight of leadership a cruel joke now. Her voice cracked, carrying the unbearable truth. We opened the gate and we are no longer crew, we are the gatekeepers now. The fuel, the prisoners. The chamber pulsed with the rhythm of the gate core, a monstrous heart of agony and death. The pulsing heart of the abyss, the gate core sat at the center, a massive writhing beast of flesh and machine. Countless faces, frozen in eternal torment, were fused into its surface. Their eyes screamed without sound, their mouths shaped in silent agony. It throbbed, each pulse sending waves of pain that crushed sanity like a hammer. The engine hungered, always hungry. The silencing of souls won by 1. The crew succumbed, their screams ripped from their throats as they were drawn toward the gate core's gaping maw. The air filled with the sickening sound of flesh tearing, bones snapping. Vance watched, powerless, as each friend, each former comrade, was consumed, becoming part of the engine's endless hunger. She felt the cold touch of death crawling up her spine as the darkness whispered promises of oblivion. The final embrace Vance knelt before the gate core. Trembling, her soul screamed silently in the crushing void. Her last moment stretched into an eternity of pain and acceptance. Her voice, barely audible, spoke into the silence. There is no light beyond this darkness, no salvation, only the eternal silence. The gate core pulsed one final time, and the darkness swallowed her whole. The cosmic tomb, the cathedral fleet vanished. Its name became a ghost story whispered by terrified spacefarers. No ship ever returned, no beacon ever signaled. Only the endless void remained, a cosmic tomb for the damned, far beyond reach of time, space, or mercy. The nightmare endured. The engine's heartbeat echoed through the stars, an unholy rhythm of pain, suffering, and endless hunger. The legacy of terror, the Event Horizon's crew had vanished into a hell not of fire, but of madness and despair. Their story, a warning burned into the cold darkness of space. Beware the gate you open. Beware the silence that follows. Beware the hunger that waits. The nightmare was patient. It was eternal. And it was hungry. Epilogue. Whispers in the dark. Some doors should never be opened, some screams should never be heard, and some nightmares are waiting patiently just beyond the veil. The void between stars was silent, too silent. No distress signals, no echoes of life. Only the faintest whisper, a ghostly susurration carried on the cosmic winds. Far from the reaches of any human outpost, the wreckage of the Event Horizon drifted, invisible to all but the most sensitive sensors. Its hull, etched with scars of impossible geometry, seemed to breathe faintly, as if alive. Inside, the gate core pulsed a slow, terrible rhythm, an engine, fueled by the souls of the damned. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Tales told in hushed tones by deep space travelers, stories of a ship that vanished, only to return as a vessel of darkness. Some said the crew's voices still called. Out through the void, pleas for rescue, promises of doom, or maddening laughter that drove listeners to despair. But none who followed ever came back. The event horizon was no longer a ship. It was a warning, a curse, a doorway, and somewhere, in the blackest depths of the cosmos, it waited, hungry, patient, silent, until the next souls dared to open the gate, the end. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let me know in the comments what ideas you would like the next story to be about. Please leave a thumbs up, share, subscribe, comment.